So Bill Gates is at it again, at least the Bill Gates Foundation that's backing a new incentive to produce genetically modified mosquitoes to West African countries to reduce the incidence of malaria. And what has that done? I'm Rosemarie Havsom, and I'm back again to help you take back full control of your life by what you choose to put at the end of your fork. So let's get into it. So yes, Bill Gates is at it again. His foundation is backing a new incentive to introduce genetically modified mosquitoes to malaria-prone countries in Africa, most notably Burkina Faso. Now, just before we get into what motivated Bill Gates to do that, let's take a look at what malaria does. So we have malaria-infected female mosquitoes that when they bite you, they infect you with parasites, malaria parasites. They get into your bloodstream, they flood and go to the liver where they incubate. And when they are mature, they burst out of the liver, continue into the bloodstream where they then attack the red blood cells, killing them by infecting them with more parasites. This leads to severe anemia, can lead to seizures in very serious cases. In general, it leads to headache, nausea, vomiting, chills, and stomach cramping. But in severe cases, it can lead to not only severe anemia, seizures, but also coma and death. So it is a very serious illness. Now, there are treatments, pharmaceutical treatments for it. The problem with a lot of these malaria-borne areas is that the population is spread over a large geographical territory, and that can make the prevention of malaria difficult. However, in some areas, people are already immune to the malaria infection, but for people who are not or have not built up immunity yet, it can be a very serious illness. When the Bill Gates Foundation funded an initiative to genetically modify mosquitoes and to say, hey, we're going to change these mosquitoes so that we will limit the number of mosquitoes, therefore limiting the number of malaria-borne mosquitoes or malaria-carrying mosquitoes, and that was the idea behind that.
Burkina Faso has officially pulled the plug on the Target Malaria Project, a Bill and Melinda Gates-backed initiative that aimed to fight malaria using genetically modified mosquitoes. The project's idea was simple but groundbreaking: release male mosquitoes that carry a gene designed to reduce mosquito populations and, in turn, reduce malaria transmission. But the government in Ouagadougou wasn't convinced. They've ordered all GMO mosquito samples to be destroyed and locked up project facilities. Why? They say the risks to biosafety, transparency, and ethics are just too high. Civil society groups had also been raising their voices, saying communities were not properly consulted and the long-term ecological effects remain unknown.
Now, in 2018, Ibrahim Traore abruptly shut down that initiative, because if you look at the statistics, the rate of malaria was increasing. So in order to counteract that, Traoré shut down the initiative, and not only shut it down, but he then destroyed the control labs where they were breeding these genetically modified mosquitoes. Now, some conspiracy theorists say that perhaps Bill Gates was more interested in population control, and that maybe these mosquitoes were actually bred with something other than malaria prevention. Some others are saying that perhaps it was increasing the state of malaria to then provide an opportunity for pharmaceuticals to make more money. These are ideas that have been thrown around, but the most important part of it is that Traoré has said no. He shut it down and said, not in my country, not on my watch.
And with one single decree, halts a project worth hundreds of millions of dollars, funded by some of the wealthiest foundations on earth. That is exactly what happened in Burkina Faso. President Ibrahim Traore has ordered the destruction of laboratories, the suspension of trials, and the burning of samples connected to genetically modified mosquitoes funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and Open Philanthropy. This was not a rumor whispered in dark corners. It was an announcement that shook the very corridors of global science. And the question it ignited is not just about malaria or mosquitoes. It is about Africa's right to decide who writes its future. Because let's be clear, malaria has haunted Africa for centuries. Scientists came with a modern fix. Engineer mosquitoes so that most offspring are male, shrink the number of female biters, shrink malaria. Clever, yes. But why was the grand experiment carried out not in London, not in Los Angeles, but in Ouagadougou? Why does the laboratory of the world always lie south of the Sahara?
And there's something to be said about this young African leader of Burkina Faso, who has single-handedly started to turn around the economic profitability of his country after centuries of being under the thumb of France's control. He's brought back the economic strength to his country. And not only that, but improved the self-esteem of his people and has been forward-thinking in ways of shutting down corrupt overuse and overpillaging of their country's resources. So this is just another feather in his cap as far as protecting his people from what he considers to be the overstepping of Western ideas and Western money. The Bill Gates Foundation has lost another one, because if malaria is increasing after the initiative to control the malaria outbreak, then what's to be said about these genetically modified mosquitoes and what's really happening there? It's been very interesting. This is something also that we need to look at when it comes to malaria and the treatment of malaria. Hydrochloroxine, the malaria treatment, the malaria prescription drug that's used to treat malaria from becoming life-threatening or life-ending. So it's very interesting that malaria has been around for a long time. But what is also interesting is how people with malaria have developed an immunity to it and has been able to counteract the spread of malaria by being preventative. One of the things that we look at is nutrition, and it's important to note that avoiding processed foods and eating natural whole foods and getting extra vitamin C is very beneficial to treating malaria naturally. If you have any questions about GMO manufactured mosquitoes and what they could be doing in the Western countries of Africa, then comment that down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. And remember that I too have a channel that's Havsom, spelled H-A-V for Victor, S-O-M for mother. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.